Hello, my name is Cody Hall, and I am the host of the Faces Entrepreneurs Are People Too. And today I'm welcoming Dr. Allan Gray, head of Purdue's Master Program in Agriculture and the founder of Dial Ventures, Purdue's venture program helping innovate and digitalize the agriculture space. So join us, learn what it means to be a part of the venture, what it takes to be an entrepreneur in the venture, and of course, what impact and why it matters to every single one of you listening to this podcast.
Hello, Dr. Gray. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Cody. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Mm, as myself as well, sir. I'm really excited for this. We've gone back and forth several times trying to get on this meeting. You are a hard man to track down. Brazil and across the country.
Yeah. Well, same with you, Cody. You know, busy people. That's the way it is. We're all busy trying to do things, and as I say, I'm mostly trying to break things. Right, do things and break things. That's the way I try to do it. So, but that keeps us busy for sure.
No, I'm excited. And Dr. Gray, I want to start off before I rabbit hole because man, can I rabbit hole. I already want to talk about people. I'm like, hey, this guy was in Brazil. Why were you in Brazil? But before we get there, right,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about who you are and what it is you do. So
Uh-huh.
please take a few moments and introduce yourself and what you do at Purdue University.
Sure. Thanks, Cody. So, who am I? I'm a Texan by birth, a farmer, an agriculturalist by the grace of the good Lord. I'm a family man, married with three beautiful children that are all out of the house now and earning their own incomes, which I think is some measure of success as a parent to get them. And they still come back home and visit too. So that's the other piece of that that's still, I think, part of winning. But I'm a professor at Purdue University. Cody, I've been here 27 years. I don't know if you knew that even, but I just
No.
passed my 27th year in August here at Purdue. So I've been here quite some time. I work in the agricultural economics department, and I'm a professor of business strategy, working with agricultural companies all across the globe. You talked about me being in Brazil. I go to Brazil quite often, but I've been all around the globe working with food and agribusiness companies. If there's a food or agribusiness company you can think of the name of, I've probably had the opportunity to work with them, usually in an executive education setting, and here more recently now in more of an innovation and entrepreneurship setting.
And that's wonderful. And I will go back to touching on the point. A good friend of mine once said, "Is a measure of success of a parent is if your kids like you when you're an adult." So if they're visiting you, Dr. Ray, then in fact, I think you can measure that as a degree of success. And so,
Yeah,
um,
well, I think that's probably true, and I think you know this already. My son lives in Phoenix, Arizona, but he's here in Indiana visiting right now. Of course, there's a reason for that. Is primarily because it's 120 degrees in Phoenix, and it's not 120 in Indiana. But he's here visiting with his mother, and I get a chance to visit with him a little bit. And it's his birthday right now, so he chose to spend his 26th birthday here with us in Indiana. So yeah, we're pretty happy to have him.
yes, then that is success. One thing that we preach here at the Faces is the balance of life and entrepreneurship. And so, and I think that you, and something I've respected about you, and for all those out there, I was a part of the Dial program, and so I got to experience many of the wonderful professionals in agriculture that Dr. Gray spoke about. And you see it there, I think, more than anywhere else, is entrepreneurs balancing life and success. And so, and never have I seen the farmer as an entrepreneur as much as I did after that time with the program. So I will call them the experts in the entrepreneur world about how to balance it. But before I get down that path too far, let's talk about Dial Ventures. For those out there who are entrepreneurs, I think it's very important for them to get a little bit more information about what the venture does.
Yeah, sure. So Dow Ventures is, in a nutshell, a startup studio. What do? We work directly with a set of entrepreneurs we recruit in to design, develop, and launch startup companies that help digitize the ag and food system. In a nutshell, that's what Dow Ventures does. And it's done that with folks like Cody who come in and work directly with us for about a 6-month period. And during that 6-month period, we go through what we call a playbook. We have a method to our madness where we start from the identification of a problem, a set of jobs to be done, a strategic opportunity area, find feedback from the industry as to whether or not these are really, truly important strategic opportunity areas for us to pursue. And when we get the feedback from the industry, say, yes, this is something you should be working on, then we go about the process of developing a solution, usually just sort of high definition wireframes of what that solution might look like, a business model, and move to sort of and move towards the idea of getting first customers on board. And then use that as the opportunity to pitch the concept and say, hey, we believe we have a concept here. The industry's told us this is a real problem, that it's an opportunity that's big enough for us to pursue, that we have a business model for it, and we have at least one customer who said, hey, if you're going to build this, we want to be your first customer to help you build it. If you can put all of those elements together in our process, we get what we call an advantaged startup. We're going to be able to invest then in that advantaged startup through our investor group, which is all agribusiness strategics, if you will, that would invest in that company. We're going to get our co-founders in place, and we're going to help that company grow and develop. And so that's what we do. So, just to summarize in a nutshell, I always tell everybody, all we really are is a startup studio that creates startups to try to digitize the ag and food industry. We just have a particular way in which we go about it, which is, I think, unique to us, particularly because of this university role that we have here at Purdue University, along with that private investment fund that sits on the side and helps really grow the things that we try to create here.
No, I love that. And that's a really great way to see that from the perspective of the venture. And, for everyone out there who has no experience with ventures, the idea of all of this is to build something that will succeed, right? We're trying to build something that will succeed. And, it's a wild ride for those out there who've never been a part of it. And I can only equate it to, for entrepreneurs who start businesses, like imagine if you made a child, right? And early on in that child's birth, you had to set forth all the advantages and skills and applicabilities it was going to have as a human. Like it has from the day one, you have to figure out like, okay, this person is going to come out 6 foot. It's going to be able to hit a ball 300 yards. Right. And so we think they could be a baseball player. The Braves want him in 20 years. Right. We will nurture him for 20 years. That has to be done in 6 months. And it's an emotional journey. I can't believe, and I've seen it with other folks from my cohort, how emotionally you get attached to the problems you want to solve, right? Things you're trying to solve. You go out and you sit with farmers, you sit with people in the food industry, and you see the need. And so you're like, wow, I want to build this. I want to succeed here. And then you build something and you're like, I want this to make it. And sometimes it doesn't, but it's all in the good faith that we're trying to make a company that likewise will succeed, not just for one customer, but for the agricultural industry.
Yeah, that's right, Cody. We have a metric here we think about at Dow Ventures, and people think we're crazy, and we might be, but that's part of the nature of what you do in an entrepreneurial world, right? But we are trying. So in our first fund, for example, in the set of cohorts that you came through with, our goal was to build 10 to 12 companies. We did that. We built 10 companies that we made investments in to get them up and running. And the concept in the end, though, of the studio is that we want to see 7 of those 10 reach an exit. That's actually our measure of success, is that we want them to have an exit. Why? Well, we're a nonprofit. So for us at Dow Ventures, it's not so we can make a bunch of money. That's what an entrepreneur would want to do, and rightfully so. That's why we like the model, because there's a good incentive system in place for everybody to want to deliver. We want that, though, because then if we've got those exits, that's the market telling us we're bringing real solutions to the market that matter, right? And that's sort of the metric of success we have. Well, people say 7 out of 10. Are you crazy? That doesn't happen. 7 out of 10 startup companies don't survive. It's more like 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10, and that's generally true across all the metrics. But our whole process is designed to create what we call advantage startups, so that we do this thing that nearly kills a Cody Hall while he's in the process here of trying to figure out what exactly is the problem, what exactly is the job to be done, what's that process going to look like, how could we help them actually solve that specific problem for that industry activity, to try to get as many of the pieces de-risked as possible, so that when you make that investment in a still highly risky activity, that you've got it in its most advantaged position you can for it to be able to survive. That's our goal and our metric. And it may be crazy, but that's what we want to do. Can we get 7 of these 10 to make it to an exit? And as you know, it's a really high bar. And we
Yeah.
hold ourselves to that standard to say, well, we're going to be rigorous and follow a really rigorous program to make sure that we can get as much chance of getting to that 7 out of 10 number as we can get to. That's always been sort of our focus around what we're trying to do in this studio.
And you got to break some eggs along the way, and that's what I love about it is it really gives the idea, the client and the entrepreneur an opportunity, right? You're literally taking 3 stakeholders and putting them in the arena with each other to see what sticks they can rub together to make the best fire. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's really cool about it, because everyone listening, they're taking entrepreneurs that are not agriculture entrepreneurs, right? They're, I did this much farming beforehand, right? And so, I own some land, right? That was my claim to agriculture, right? And then they brought me from the tech world, healthcare world into, to try to make an agriculture startup. And it was one, you have to get over 2 bridges. One, the idea of what is agriculture, right? That's the education point, because you don't know what agriculture is. I promise everyone here, unless you know what agriculture is, trust me, you don't know what agriculture is. And then you have to figure out also, what does the industry need, right? And then that in itself has so many definitions of what is the industry. When I thought agriculture, I thought soil, farm, and plant, right? I did not think processor or food delivery, or as far as out is the grocery store, right? I didn't think, how far does this really go? It's a whole educational process.
Yeah. Yeah. And Cody, it's sort of our differential advantage. We're not the only startup studio in the world, but I think we have a couple of things that differentiate us in that marketplace, which is something you always have to look for, is what's your differentiator. And, at Dow Ventures, we think of ourselves as a startup building startups. So when we do that, we always are thinking, well, how do we compete? What is our marketplace? Who are our customers? How do we create an advantage, a differential advantage relative to other competitors? And for us, there's 2 things I think that are critically important to us, and that is our very well developed industry connections all across the agri-food supply chain. Those core connections from financing service providers to seed genetics companies to crop protection companies that produce the things that we need to feed and protect the crop, to the animal feeders, to the animal producers, to the animal harvesters, to the CPGs, and all of that pieces in between. And we have a very, very large network. Almost 9,000 contacts of people in the upper level management to C-suite level of these companies. And what I mean by that, Cody, is that here at Dial, we can pick up the telephone and make a call to somebody at a particular company and say, hey, I need 45 minutes of your time in a Zoom call because a set of our entrepreneurs want to do a discovery call with you to understand better what's happening in your world with respect to regenerative agriculture, or with respect to now food as health is something that we're starting to work on. And we were working on logistics at one time. We were working on labor, right? These are things that give us a real advantage, is that ability to have that network. And so what that means for us is, yes, we're experts, I'd like to think, in the agri-food system, but we're not experts who just sit and tell our folks, here's what you need to know. We're experts because we have the connections to the experts in that industry. That is a key
the guy who knows a
advantage,
guy.
key advantage we have at Dial.
No, I
Right?
agree. And I think that is, just during my time there, interesting opportunities were being greeted by executives at Wingstop, and then being hosted by Wingstop, fed by them, and given an afternoon to sit down at their headquarters. Dallas, we were in Dallas. And then go into Koboba, and then we went over to Pepsi Cola. And so you're sitting down with these multi-billion-dollar giants, right? And they're hosting you. They're welcoming you with their team, their executives, and say, yes, please come sit down with us. We want to tell you about what we're doing. And, that's the type of experience that you have at the Dial program, that maybe for your entrepreneurs out there that you haven't had before. Imagine walking into a a room with, crazy thought process here with a startup is imagine walking into a room with resources. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, it was almost like being in the Marine Corps if the Marine Corps had funding, right?
Yeah.
And so
Right.
it was a
Right.
great opportunity.
Right, right. And Cody, I remember in that week of those visits, yeah, we were in PepsiCo's headquarters. We were in Wingstop's headquarters. We also went out to a cotton gin. Most of you have never even seen a cotton gin before
Yes.
in your life, and a set of
Ever in
cotton
my
farmers,
life.
and moved from there over to a farmer who's got multiple businesses. He's farming 14,000 acres. He's also selling fertilizer, chemicals, and seed, and running a complete agribusiness company, and then even having an opportunity to share a meal with him that night that I think you've even had
Yeah.
follow-ons with Jay since that
Yes.
time
Very.
to keep you in connection with him. So that's the point, right? We're trying to help people see the entire supply chain, the agri-food supply chain, and all the pieces of that puzzle, because you never know where you might find the job to be done that really is the job that needs to get done in this bigger picture process that creates a venture
Yeah.
backable opportunity. That's why we have that set of industry experiences to try to give you that chance to see where that possibility might be.
Yeah.
But Cody, let
And
me
I,
tell you, let
go
me tell you
please.
what the differentiator is. So if that's our advantage, is our ability to understand the industry. The differentiator is the entrepreneurs, though, right? And that's where I think the two pieces come together nicely. We find the Cody Halls of the world who are open to the idea of saying, "Hey, wait a minute. I don't need you to help me build my business. I want to come help you build a business. Let's go find out together what we should be doing to build a business." And it's a unique thing to find that set of talents who says, I don't actually don't have an idea right now, but I'm open minded. I kind of like this idea of the ag and food industry. Why don't I come work with you, because you'll help me understand what the ag and food industry is, and you're going to get me in front of people who'll help me think about what the problems are, and then we'll come up with a solution. And as you know, Cody, that doesn't always happen, right? Most entrepreneurs kind
Correct.
of start from a technology. They have a solution. They're looking for somebody like a Dial Ventures to help them build their company. And there's a
Correct.
lot of folks out there. They do that. They do that very well. And when we have folks who come to us who have an idea and they want help, we send them to Techstars or somebody else who does that really well. What we do differently, very differently than everybody else, is that our entrepreneurs who come in, they come in without that idea. And we don't care that they don't know agriculture, because we can bring them that. But what they bring to that is the spirit, the openness, and the thoughtfulness to say, how can I create a company value, a value proposition out of what we're learning from the industry piece of it? As a startup studio, having those entrepreneurs working with us from the very start to build empathy around the problem, to my knowledge, nobody else in the studio world does that. We're the only ones
No.
who focus on, let's bring in entrepreneurs, let's build empathy for our industry, and then figure out how to build a company.
No, and that's a perfect segue and kind of where I want to shift. And this is the value to the entrepreneurs, right? Those out there listening who think, wow, that sounds like an amazing opportunity. You're right. Like, let's park on that for a moment because, warning, right? An advisory is that you're going to care, right? I actually was I was more upset at the end of it that my venture didn't get funded and I didn't make it to where I wanted, because man, you just care about, and you talk about the empathy piece, you just care about what you started creating and you want it. Like, you're there at pitch day at the end of 6 months after so much work. You're like, you really want this thing to fly, right? And especially if you're lucky enough at that point in time to like have your idea, make it in full, basically to the end. Like, oh, you made it here. Like, okay, I have this full idea. I really want to see this through. Um, you, you do care a lot, and the empathy is very thick. And, you mentioned the relationships that you make as well. I stay in contact with numerous people that I met not only through my actual cohort, but also through the relationships on the visits. You talked about Jay in Dallas. Absolutely. Just amazing people that you meet. And for me, like, I'm not sitting here running a dial startup that has been brought through the industry. However, it was such an experience that I'll always cherish. Right. I got a lot of value and a lot of insight and education on the industry. And I feel like I'm so much more well equipped to understand agriculture and the challenges the world faces. And that was worth the time spent by itself.
Yeah, I think, Cody, you got so many thoughts around that. I think one, I think it takes a special kind of person and a special kind of talent to be a fellow. You've heard this from me already as you went through graduation day. I said I don't know how people could do that. I'm not sure I could be an entrepreneur in the dial
Yeah.
system because it takes a very special person that says I'm willing to take this risk. I'm going to take 6 months of my life and I'm going to dedicate it to this activity in an industry I really don't even know that much about, and I'm not even exactly sure what it is that I might create, and I don't know what the outcome's going to be. That's a really hard place to be, but it's a place that
Yes.
entrepreneurs tend to thrive in. True entrepreneurs tend to live in that sort of uncertain
Yeah.
ambiguity sort of space, and so first of all, I think it takes a lot of talent, and I have empathy for folks like you who decide to take that risk and come into our program and do these kind of things. But I do hope that people like you appreciate the value of, hey, one, you get to learn a lot about an industry that most people just don't even know very much about. And you're going to learn about that whole industry and you're going to make strong connections in that industry. You're going to be able to go through a rigorous process that talks about how do you really think about how to do discovery to understand really what a problem is and a job to be done, and how do you take those jobs to be done and turn that into something that actually could be a company. And there's a rigorous process that if you follow that well, you'll de-risk that business. We don't focus a lot on de-risking the technology, but that's because, as you
Yeah.
know, in our program, we're not a technology forward
Right.
studio. We're a problem forward studio. What's the
Yeah.
problem? And let's worry about that. And then what we
Wow.
want to do is figure out what's the simplest solution to solve the problem, not what's this great tech I have and can I go find a problem for it, right? So hopefully people see the value in that process. They make a lot of connections through our network, but then that network blows up for them in their own. Cody, you had so many conversations that started
Yeah.
from our network, but then blossomed into your own network that
Yeah.
you got to leave this program with, along with an ability to be proud of the, hey, here's some things that we really thought through carefully that we see could be something that the industry wants to have. And so those are all the benefits for the entrepreneur, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say I also understand that the cost of that is that not all of those ideas end up getting funded in the end, and that's a really hard thing to take. And Cody was one of those that it didn't get funded for, and that's certainly something that I always say, man, I hate that those things don't that we don't get to allow you to continue to pursue that passion through the dollars that we might invest. But
Yeah.
maybe you still have a passion for the industry and want to pursue it in other ways, and you've learned some things and built a network to say you can go have an impact in this industry in a way beyond that particular concept we built in that particular space. And so yeah, uh, pros and
No, it's
cons being an entrepreneur in the dial system. No different than, hey, you could have, I suppose, Cody, spent 6 months trying to build a company on your own and either gotten funding or not gotten funding, right? It's the nature of
correct.
startups, I
Well,
suppose.
and I think that's, you know, I really focus on what I've gathered from, we have clients now at telehelping in the agriculture space. And so
Right.
I don't think I could have ever have done that if I had not been with Purdue. And so now I have, small ag retailers that use our virtual assistants, right? And
Right.
so that's really cool. Wouldn't even know what an ag retailer was if it wasn't for going through the program, right?
Right.
Never in my
Right.
life, right? What do they
Right.
do? And so now you have those skills. And then I think that the program itself, just talking about the actual curriculum and what you experience, jobs to be done, something that you've mentioned several times in our conversation. To be completely honest, I've stolen that idea, right? Not y'all's idea itself, but I've taken that idea and I redid the entire way telehelping approaches its clients' problems, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so before it was like, Dr. Gray, tell me what type of person you would like to hire. And you're like, I want a marketer. And I'm like, you got you a marketer. Here you go. Go be happy. And I realized, wow, that was not really working all the time. And now it's the conversation is like, what are you trying to accomplish? Tell me this job that you're trying to accomplish. And maybe that's a full role, but maybe there's another job over here you're trying to accomplish and that we can combine them. And so we've redone the entire process and we vertically integrated elements of our business with sister companies now. And
Yeah.
all that innovation, it came from my time at the Dial program. Did start a company with Dial, but now we are, my company's 25% bigger than it was a year ago. And we retain the clients because now we ask them what the problem is. What are you trying to do? What a crazy thought process. Whatever that one question is.
Yeah. That's really heartwarming to hear, Cody, and I want to believe that for all of our entrepreneurs. And I think if you ask them, most of them would tell you, if nothing else out of the program, I have a change in perspective in terms of the way I think about
Yes.
what exactly am I trying to do for my customer? And how do I really think about adding value, right? The whole value proposition canvas stuff that we work on. No, by the way, you didn't steal that from us. You spent 6 months earning the right to go use that in every way you possibly can. Even if you
Yes.
can monetize it directly, I encourage you go right ahead and do that because you earned
Done.
you earned the right to do that. Because for us, it's always been about that, Cody. How can we want to multiply the impact we can have coming out of the university. And one of the things we're always frustrated about is a lot of academic stuff that we do. And I love doing academic stuff. I'm an academic, but a lot of that, it kind of falls into an echo chamber of just other academics share academic stuff. We're trying here to say, wait a minute, if we could get this out to industry and through entrepreneurs, we believe there's a force multiplier that can allow that to really have a much bigger impact on the industry. Now, I never thought about having it help me and helping us in the telehelp business, but it should. There's no reason why
That
the
did.
concepts of teaching they're not unique to agriculture. It's just we happen to have an industry where we apply this tool fairly effectively, and of course we borrowed that from the folks at Harvard who originally put that together. And InnoSight actually is the company who put that together, and we borrowed it too. We're a force multiplier for their concepts to say now let's apply those in our industry. And now here you
I
are
love it.
multiplying it again. That's exactly from our perspective. That's our currency. It's a hard
Yeah.
thing sometimes for entrepreneurs to get their heads around, but for us here at Dow Ventures, our currency is how do we have real impact? Not really how much money do we make or how many dollars, how much revenue generation can we have. Of course, those things matter. We have investors. We got to get a return to those investors. Our belief is if
Yeah.
we can have real impact in the industry, that investor side of it will take care of itself.
And it's an inter-perspective element because I think the time and the application of what I learned, and I think that's something that Tim said early on. And the idea is that if at the end of this 6 months, you're not running a company for us, our goal is to have given you something. And I
Right.
can say that I received something, and not only received something, connections, right, education, but I feel like I have a value and pride in the Purdue name and what it represents and what it's doing for the industries that it supports. Zero connection to Indiana except for Purdue, and that's just, to me, it's such a valuable piece. And I think ultimately, if you are watching this, applying for the Dow program is something that, even participating in that, if you're given the opportunity to participate in the selection process, right? I talk to a lot of people who've attempted to be Navy SEALs and Green Berets and all these things. And there's a value that they got even from that selection process, though they weren't selected, right? And I felt like making it through the process, I was like, I made the process. Like, hey, like, go me. And because it wasn't an easy process. And so the experience of trying to be a part of it was in itself an experience. And so I think that it's something that if anyone here is questioning, what their next step is and where they're going to place their hat, and if they have value in another industry or whatever that industry is, look into the Dial program. For me, right, it was insignificant, and 6 months in the grand scheme of life is small, right? The money earned is small. The value I count is as in people, education, and experience that I've been able to retrofit for my existence, my startups, and be able like, hey, cool, I did that back there, and now look what it's doing for me today. And it's been a wonderful time.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out, Cody. I do think that we have a good, Tim has put together a great process for us in terms of the application process and helping us find the best set of entrepreneurs we can. We're limited in the number that we take each time. And so we usually get a significant amount of applicants, probably anywhere between 60 and 70 applicants, and we're only taking 4 to 6 right at a time. And
Yeah.
so it's a pretty rigorous process. Cody, for your audience, they don't know this. You're a glutton for punishment because you went through it twice. The first time you
Right.
went through
I
it,
remember.
the first
I
time you went through
remember.
it, the first time you went through it, you were selected, but you decided, and rightfully so, I think, life circumstances, you're like, I
Yeah.
probably can't commit to where I need to right now. It was a really smart decision, I think, on your part. especially after you did come back the second time, got back through it again and was accepted the second time. And then when you went through it, you're like, man, I'm glad I didn't do that the first time because
Correct.
I wouldn't have been able to manage the activities, right? So, but they should know you're a glutton. You're such a glutton for punishment. You went
I
through that application process twice. So,
that's so funny. Like I do think that I am a glutton for punishment, just in life. My wife, when she'll go out and watch me surf, she's like, you spend more time getting beat up by the waves than actually surfing. I'm like, you know what? Like, because I love math, and so I do count how long I'm out in the water every afternoon, and I average it across how many waves I catch, just to understand how prolific my afternoon's been. And if I'm sitting there, if I've spent more time drinking water than surfing, I always sit there. It's like, okay, right, maybe I do enjoy getting beat up a little too much. But
yeah,
if you're a good entrepreneur, like, you have to take a punch, right? And I
right.
think some of the punches, when the companies are coming down from your individual projects to group projects to final pitches, and just being like, hey, listen, we're not moving forward with this piece, but we need you to get behind this model. Like, that is, you said, like, that's the entrepreneur we're looking for. We're looking for, like, hey, listen, this boat's not making it, but this boat is, and so let's push this forward.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you have that in you, definitely, we're going to have all the information for the Dial program hyperlinked into the description, as well as
yeah.
little bubbles that pop up on the screen in case you miss it. And so, Dr. Gray, I want to give you back time because you've been such a great guest and explaining in such great detail, like you do, because you have to. You know it by now. You built this program, right? And so
Right.
you should know it. And so I
That's right.
want to leave with any final words that you may have regarding the Dial Ventures program before we say goodbye today.
Yeah, Cody, just our plan at the moment is to launch the next studio. We're in fundraising mode right now to raise fund two, and when we get fund two raised, we're going to start the studio up again. Our plan right now is to start that studio in February, first week of February or last week of January 2026. That means applications will be opening up somewhere near the mid to late November, early part of December activity. So look for that from us. It'll be on LinkedIn and a number of other places. We'll make sure Cody knows. He'll get it out to his
Yeah, of
network, and everybody
course.
knows when that application process is. If you think it's something for you, would welcome any of the entrepreneurs who are listening to you here that want to get into our process and learn what it is we do and see if we can't have a real impact on the ag and food system. By the way, the most important industry in the world. If we
Yeah,
don't have that industry, none of us gets to eat, and then life isn't worth it anymore because you won't
correct.
be alive, right? So we are
Correct.
absolutely the most important industry in the world. So if you want to come work with us, we'd love to work with you.
Oh, sir, thank you so much, Dr. Gray. Thank you for your time, sir. And I'll go ahead and hit the end button and sign off. I hope you have a great day with your son and his birthday.
Hey, thanks, Cody. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you for watching The Faces. Entrepreneurs are people too. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Spotify so you do not miss any of our content just like today. We really appreciate you being one of our viewers, and see you soon.